Good evening and welcome to TalkSports, our midweek program. And I'm greeting you with the news that our program is live from one of the, should I say one of, the most beautiful place on earth. Yes, Grenada. Thank you very much, Grenada. And yes, I am in St. George's, Grenada. And it is our first official program from the Spice Isle, live from the Spice Isle. Well, so much has been happening in terms of sports over the last few weeks, and a lot of excitement and conversation generated over the past few days regarding the comments made by Harvey Glance, Kirani's coach, and some of what he had to say. And no doubt I've heard from some athletes, from some coaches, and from some folks just in the media, and it's all about what they believe is right for not just track and field, though Harvey Glance is a track and field coach, but they believe that some of what he has said can, be applied to the sports in general, the sporting landscape in general. So no doubt quite a bit we got from Harvey Glance, and we'll probably try to get some more from Harvey during this program. But it's interesting because we have been speaking to, trying to get a gauge from some of the athletes and their coaches, but particularly their coaches, because as we see it, that some of the athletes are continuing on the circuit. So it was the Olympic Games, especially our professional athletes, but there are those who are basically continuing along on the circuit, and we want to at least continue to support and encourage them. It must not just be the big games, the Olympic Games, the World Championships, the Gold Cup tournament, whatever is the regional international tournament. We must continue to support these athletes, and it must not just be a one-stop shop. Well, Anderson Peters is in Europe, along with his coach, Paul Phillip, and they are continuing on the circuit. In fact, on Sunday, Anderson will be in competition in Germany, but he is back in his base in Slovakia, along with Coach Paul Phillip. I had the opportunity to talk to Coach Phillip to get an idea of what went wrong, What went wrong at the Olympic Games? There were high expectations for Anderson Peters as the reigning world champion in the javelin, just like, obviously, there were some expectations for Kirani James. And there were high expectations for these, particularly two javelin throwers from the Caribbean, in Anderson Peters and also Keishan Walcott of Trinidad and Tobago. They carried the Caribbean on their shoulders, and they were not among the medalists. In fact, as we know, Keishan Walcott is the 2012 London Olympics javelin champion, and Anderson Peters is the 2019 Doha World Championship javelin champion. So they are champions in their own right. So speaking to Coach Paul Phillip to get an idea of what really went wrong, and also what are the plans for Anderson Peters in the very near future, and also in defense of his world title come next summer in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon. Hear what he had to say. Tonight to talk about post-Tokyo Olympics is Mr. Paul Phillip. He is Anderson Peters' coach, and he's well-known, well-respected throws coach in not just in Grenada, but in the Caribbean. Let me welcome Mr. Paul Phillip, who has not returned to Grenada, but is continuing the trek because it was the Olympic Games, but things continue. Good evening to you, Mr. Paul Phillip.
Good evening, Bascom, and good evening to the listening public.
Right. So let's look at the Tokyo Olympic Games, and probably for those who may be wondering and trying to understand, how was it, and then what went wrong or right?
Well, the Tokyo Olympics 2020 was a brilliant games given the circumstances.
Right.
I think generally Team Grenada did very well. Um, Most might have looked at um, the exploits of Kirani as the highlights, and then that was rightfully so. Um, all of our athletes gave a good account of themselves. It was very unfortunate that first of all we had Melanie not being able to complete the 400 because of an injury, and then the disappointing news of Anderson Peters not making it to the final. Um, Lyndon Victor was able to complete and and improve on his showing at the Olympic Games with seventh place finish, and that is a commendable performance at any level, given what he has been going through of late in preparation for Tokyo. So it was a good game for Grenada, and I think each one of those athletes must be commended, along with the coaching staff and the administrators who were part of the Tokyo 2020.
Before going in directly to Anderson's performance, because you were in charge of him there in terms of as coach, but you also had something to do with Lyndon because you assisted. You were there in over in California for a while and things like that. But and you just mentioned as well his improvement in the throw, especially in the javelin. Let's talk a bit about that in particular, because I know you have been working with both Lyndon and Kurt before in terms of the throws. Not what you expected for the discus, but definitely the javelin, you would say.
Well, people have to first start by understanding the nature of the decathlon. The decathlon takes place over 2 days and it's 5 events per day. On day one, you have um, the 100 meters, and then you proceed to doing the shot put and those events. You have the high jump and all of this to take place. Now, let me speak firstly to the general preparation of Lyndon. And I think people may not know, but Lyndon is attached to the Santa Barbara Track Club in California and coached by a team of persons there, led by Josh Priester. Um, and they have been doing a tremendous job in preparing Lyndon. My input is more with the throwing side and some input when it comes to strength and conditioning. As we know, in Doha in 2019, Lyndon basically fouled out in the discus. And it was that kind of spurred me trying to get him back to proper technique and a more composed, relaxed um, person when it comes to competing. Because there was no reason for Doha 2019, him doing 3 no throws. He's well capable of throwing 40, 45 to 50 meters in a standing position, but It was what it was. We saw the technical flaws, and we decided to work together to decide on the way forward, um, to prevent a thing like that happening in the future. Um, we spent quite a few hours working on rectifying the problem of throwing the discus into the net or outside of the right side of the sector. Now, that we are very comfortable with at the moment. It was really unfortunate that he hadn't gone out earlier and tried to get the decathlon best in the discus, which is just above 55 meters. Um, he also had great improvement in his shot put, and these are the strengths of his events. He's more a power thrower, a power decathlete, which means that he excels at the throwing events
Right.
more than any other. And his javelin, I guess that's what everybody saw as the highlight of his whole performance. Um, that had taken some work. As a matter of fact, everyone is quite happy and surprised that of his recovery, because while I was in California doing some work with him, he tore an oblique muscle that's somewhere on the block side, and that stopped him from working on the javelin in particular and any of the other throws for about 5 weeks. So there was some setbacks, but we are happy that he was able to pull that through and with confidence to get a personal best in the javelin. We could look back now and say, had it not been for the injury, he probably would have been 75 plus in the javelin. But the work continues because next year we're looking forward to, Commonwealth Games and the World Championships.
World Championships. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to Anderson now, and I want you to spend some time on that in particular. So tell us about Anderson's performance, and also in depth in terms of the steps, because I still think there are those, and looking at some of the comments, there are people who still do not understand when it comes to the Olympic Games in terms of the qualifying rounds and all of that. And I'm giving you that opportunity because it's your baby, and in terms of the explanation, I always say you probably best at explaining these sort of things. So first of all, let's talk about Anderson's performance at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
Yes, the results wasn't what Grenada was expecting, or what we were expecting as a team, Anderson and I. But it's a learning experience. I think the season has been rough going. He's been struggling technically to make the connection. It's not an issue of whether he's fit enough or strong enough. It is just an issue of making the connection technically. The javelin is quite a complicated event. You have to use speed, power, and technique all coming together to give you this nice, long, enjoyable throw that would be measured further than anybody else's. The challenges began with in 2019 after the World Championships, which he won. He had to undergo surgery in his left knee. Right now, that surgery, though it went well, the recovery was hampered by the COVID-19 and the shutdown of school, where he did the surgery. Now he spent quite a few months in Grenada, and the rehabilitation that was supposed to go into that leg was not done, and it is not until midway in the season that we recognize that some of his joints and some of his muscles were not properly conditioned, and so they were missing links in connecting, for example, the ankle and the calf muscle. They were not working well, and so we had to take a few steps back, a few weeks after competition, and to start to get some mobility back in those joints and those muscles. So it is still a process of getting him to connect those in a manner which would produce longer throws. So that's just a backdrop as to why you saw the performance that you saw. I think going in there, we really thought his confidence was up. We really thought that this is going to be the meet where we get everything right. Of course, it's the Olympic, and the adrenaline is on, and everybody look forward to the Olympics, and he wanted to have a good showing, and it's unfortunate that it didn't come true at these games. Now, as far as the rungs and how do you get to the final of the Olympics?
Just before you continue there, if you can just drop down and not see the top of your head. I think we missed in that one. Right, yeah. So let's go on to the rounds now, the qualifying rounds. I think you, as I will say, teacher Paul Phillip, teach us.
Right. So the first thing that was supposed to happen is that there was a qualification period, and within that period, the qualification to get to the Olympics would have been 85 meters. In the absence of having the top 32 persons in the world making 85 meters, you would have the best 32 invited to the games. And if you look on the stats, you would realize that not many throwers this year in the world got past 84 meters. So it's less than 12 of those would have gotten past the qualification standards. Now, going into the games, you had first qualification where they split the group of 32 into 16. So you had an A group and a B group. Anderson was in the B group, and you had to throw 83 meters, right? So the qualification was 83 meters something,
Yeah.
to qualify to go into the top 12.
Yeah, I think it was 83.5 meters. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would have been what you needed to throw to get into the top 12, which would on the day of the final would be given a further 3 throws, and then you select the best 8 to take a further 3 throws, from which you would get your Olympic champion and your second and third place.
Mm-hmm. And compare that now to, let's say, a Diamond League, for example. You go and you just throw. You have probably a maximum of 6 throws, and out of that, the best thrower wins, right?
Well, the Continental Cup is more of that format. So the Continental Cup and the World Athletics Tour, of which the Grenada Invitational is a part of. So if Anderson was to come to Grenada to throw, you would have the format where they invite in maybe 10, 15 throwers, who knows. And all of these throwers are given a 6-throw series. And the best out of the 6 would be counted as your best throw. And they would take the top 3 throws to give the medals. The Diamond Leagues have changed. And so what is happening at Diamond Leagues is that you get in, if you get into the Diamond League, they would have everyone taking 3 throws, and then they take the top 3 persons, and that 3 persons get 1 more throw.
So kind of throw off.
Yes, so you have a throw off. So it doesn't matter too much whether you break a world record in the first 3.
Yeah.
If you get in to be one of those 3 persons who have that 1 throw, they take the 40th attempt of that last throw to decide the medals, the positions. All right. The Diamond Leagues is also a point system. So right now, Anderson sits in 2nd position, though he has not won any of the Diamond Leagues. Right? So he has participated in 3 so far and has accumulated 8 points. The leader in the Diamond League right now is Keyshawn Walcott. He has accumulated, I think, 13 points. So for each of your finishing positions, they allocate points. Now, 6 persons would be chosen based on the point system to go into the Diamond League finals, which would be held on the 8th of September. And there are 2 more qualifying meets for the Diamond Leagues. So this is the reason why we are still in Europe, because we are trying to get into the finals, Of course, the Diamond Leagues is the Diamond Leagues. It's a little bit more lucrative in terms of prize money and prestige. If you're the Diamond League winner, you get like a wild card into maybe next year's World Championships. Not that we need it, because Anderson has he's the defending champion, so he doesn't have to qualify for it again. So that's basically how we explain the different competition formats.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the wild card and the World Championship, because as the defending champion, and 1 year to go, closer to home, what's I know it's a bit too early, but there must be a confidence level in that Anderson Peters camp regarding defending world champion closer to home come Oregon 2022.
Yeah, well, I tell you straight, right now the feeling is that we're embarking on a legendary status in terms of javelin throwing for Anderson, and the World Championships is the beginning, or was the beginning of that legendary journey. Now, in order to get that, you have to be defending your world title on every occasion that you want. So we are trying to put all the things together that we need to. As we said, this year, if we won the Olympics, if we win the Diamond League final, it is a learning experience. We would have acquired a lot of knowledge as to do's and don'ts, and we're building into the defense of his world title. So come next year, there's a serious plan and a push towards defending in style.
Right. And well, and finally, in this whole conversation here, Paul, is still confident that the Caribbean will continue to produce the caliber of the Anderson Peters, the Keyshawn Walcott and company. There was a lot of expectations from these two in particular because they represented the Caribbean in terms of the throws, especially the javelin at the Olympic Games, and a lot of expectations from them. But you're still confident that we'll be able to produce the more likes of Anderson Peters and Keyshawn Walcott in the Caribbean?
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I think we're on a good path. I think the coaches are motivated. I think the youths who look up to those guys as champions, as role models, there's still, a lot of interest among young men, young females as well, who want to aspire to become world champions and Olympic champions, and just to be able to showcase what the Caribbean is about. So I think there is still a lot of interest, and we're gonna, as coaches, push on and try to get more of our people highlighted and showcased on the world stage.
Mhm. But short of that, Paul, you have to recognize, and I'm certain it's something that is of concern to you and other coaches, the lack thereof of competition. You have to be in Europe, some far places, to get that level of competition because of the lack of quality throwers in the Caribbean.
Yeah, and that has raised some concern among Caribbean coaches, not only in the throws, you know, but also in the running events. Um, as I said, there's a point system that has been adopted by World Athletics, and that point system is really showing up to be unfair because of some of the competitions that you would enter. Now, if you're in Europe, you get more competition, obviously, and those competitions are rated higher than competitions in the Caribbean, for example. You get more points for them. So if you looked up on the screen, you would have seen when they introduce athletes, you would see ranked XY in the world, and that ranking came from a points accumulated for the number of meets that the person would have taken part in, and also the level of those meets. So yes, we need competitions, and we have to look seriously into it. But it's not until our athletes get to a world-class level that they are able to come to Europe, because then they would have a sponsor who would pay for them to be able to make a trip and have a stay in a place where they can train and move from place to compete. So the challenge would be for the up and coming athletes who have not yet gotten contracts that will allow them to come out and compete against the best that Europe has to offer, the best that the world has to offer. Um, how do you get them at the higher level? And we know competition brings out the best in our people. So it's a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge, and I think the situation with the pandemic has not made it any easier. Even at the junior level, we see what has been going on in junior. We know that the intercall games will not take place. We know that the amount of competitions that we normally have was cut in probably about half. But we stand ready to try new things. I guess we would still now have to be thinking about how we can get maybe the best of Grenada come up against the best of Trinidad, or the best of Grenada against the best of Jamaica, to create some competitions for athletes in the region. I know that I've heard some talk of the Pan Am region trying to institute some form of a circuit similar to what happens in Europe. So we await those plans and see how things would turn out for athletes.
Yeah, but and on that final point, a very important thing you raised, but it's now a challenge now for you and other coaches and others in terms of whetting that appetite for athletes again after this long layoff. You mentioned the intercall and all the other activities that may have cut, including the Carafta Games as another one. How do you go about whetting the appetite of these athletes, getting them all aroused again back into the flow of track and field?
It's a challenge. I mean, just trying to get people, athletes, consistently in training. I know of the challenge. I mean, we are placed in a unique situation in my club, where because of the structure of the club, we're able to get parents to support what we're doing. And we've been able to create some internal competitions. Um, is that enough? No, because you kind of try to appease the athletes by painting a picture that there's a lot of opportunities outside of Grenada. You can get to travel in the Caribbean, for example. You get to go to a junior CAC games at NACAC or Panam or Carifta. And when you don't have those games happening, um, it sends a gloomy picture to the athletes. And I don't know. It's going to be a challenge going forward. We can't forever be just painting a picture of wait until you get to the US, because without those regional competitions, a lot of the scouts and so that would be able to see you, to be able to give you that exposure that you would need, will not be seeing you.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Paul. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, always a learning experience, always bringing it down to the level that one can understand. And I keep saying, for those who don't understand when Paul speaks, is that you're not listening or you're hard of hearing, you know. Thanks once again, Paul, and all the best out in Europe. And we'll always keep in touch.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, okay then. Thank you very much, folks. That's Paul Phillip joining us out in Europe, has no doubt always giving us the tidbits and no doubt giving us a lot of breakdown as to the performances of those athletes. And Paul is always honest and sincere, for giving us just about everyone, because he had something to do, and he always show an interest in the welfare of the other athletes when he's part of a team. Okay, yes, Anderson's coach, but still showed an interest, whether it's Melanie, whether it's Kirani, or whoever it is, Anderson, Lyndon, whoever it is, a member of the team, will show that interest and always willing to support the athletes, and that is what it is about. And I want to thank him for always being part of our program and explaining, especially because for those who can't remember, is Paul Peters who brought to a large extent and basically encouraged the coverage, because I was involved in the media at that time, the sports media, he was for years appealing for the coverage of field events, because everything was just the track. And for years, you speak to him and saying, listen, this is where the action is. And until lately, people start getting into it. And we see it even in the Caribbean now that, a lot of focus is on the, um, the field events, Field events will be going on and there's no track and there's no coverage. But now we're seeing that there's no track, field events going on, but there is coverage, and the track events coverage will continue when it starts, And I want to thank Paul for that, especially in Grenada and the Caribbean, that emphasis in highlighting and showcasing our field athletes, whether it's the javelin, whether it's and not just the throws, even though he's specialized in throws, but it was even the jumps and all of that. They started focusing on that, and I want to thank him for that effort, and I'm hoping that it's something that can continue for a while because I think the effort of these field athletes, the field event athletes, is equal to some extent and surpassing because on the track is just a couple of seconds in most cases, whether it's the 100, the 200, the 400. But you have these athletes out there throwing, and it involves strength, mental, it's mental as well, and the physical fitness, so much. But I want to thank Paul, and I can say so much again in terms of what Paul has taught me and others throughout our tenure. I want to thank him for that. Okay, then. Thank you very much. That's indeed. Uh, we had uh, yes, Paul Phillip giving us, what it was. Very interesting discussion with Paul, and he highlighted some very important points indeed, including that of which, how it will affect our athletes going forward because, lack of competition thereof is, all about getting these athletes back in tune with things. And he highlighted some of the challenges as well. One comment, a bit lengthy, but I will read it. Kellon on Twine is saying the Grenadian athletes all wanted the Tokyo Olympics to have represented at this high level during the pandemic is extraordinary. Kirani's bronze medal, Lynden Victor's improvements from 16th place in last Olympic Games to 7th position this time is incredible. Delron Felix's excellent performance in the swim and Anderson Peters getting to the Olympics was incredible. The future looks great for Grenada track and field. Paul Phillip, you are a man of honor and thanks a million I guess, for your continued support. And Rudy and saying there's both that go into the sport and what people see. Definitely, a lot of things they see on in television and take it for granted. And while it's Paul Phillip and he's dealing with track and field, and again, I'm saying what these guys are saying, whether it's Paul Phillip for the throws or Harvey Glance as the coach of Kirani James, I think a lot of what they're saying can be implemented somewhere or the other. And it's not so much coaching techniques, but how you get your athletes to be professional, all these sort of things. And what they're saying, by and large, I think, are things that our other coaches, the other coaches in Grenada, can adapt, can attune to, can instill in their charges. To me, I am seeing a lot of free advice coming from these coaches. Paul Phillip now, who's based in Europe, obviously is moving to another level, gaining a lot of experiences, of Harvey Glance, no doubt, is an experienced international coach. And I think it's an opportunity for those in Grenada who do not have that opportunity to try to come on and try to gain as much as possible. While we get some more comments coming in there, I want to bring in a piece of what I believe in the conversation with Harvey Glance last week. Folks may have missed a very important part of that conversation, and something I believe that has spurred some discussions and some arguments in the early years of Harvey Glance and Kirani James. And I'm bringing it back to the table for folks because I think it's very important. It was unfortunate at the time, and all because of a lack of information. But Harvey Glance brought it up in our recent conversation, and in the whole discussion, I believe we have missed it. Okay, and as a public service announcement, I would say I want to bring that again, and after that, I will come back and we'll have another discussion.
Fact that you still have not added another athlete to the camp. You have been coaching Kirani and Kirani for the last decade. How many coaches have done that or will do that? Coach Glance, why?
Well, a couple of things. One, you have to have a certain belief in each other. From day one, I tell the story about Kirani's club coach, Albert Joseph, and I tell the story that he did a great job with Kirani, bringing him up to that particular point. And I can remember when we went to the World Juniors in Moncton, Canada, and Kirani won the World Juniors and did a great job. And we went to McDonald's after the race to talk. And at that point in time, Kirani stunned me as well as Albert, I'm sure, when he said, "Coach Albert, I want Coach Glance to be my coach." And I was shocked, and I'm sure Albert was shocked as well. But I felt like, Kirani made that decision based on one, my experience, not just as a coach, but as an athlete. And I can remember the day like it was yesterday, and I looked over to Coach Albert and I said, "Are you all right with this?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm okay with that." And so whether he meant that or not, I have no idea. But Kirani made that decision in Moncton, Canada, in McDonald's that day to say, "I want Coach Glance to be my coach." It wasn't my decision; it was his decision. But I also wanted to make sure that Albert was all right with it because, it was. I mean, he had known Kirani since he was a pup, and obviously, some things got real ugly because everyone was like, Coach Glance trying to steal Kirani. He's trying to do. No, I did not do that. I've never been that kind of person. That's not my makeup, as you probably well know right now. But it was Kirani's decision, and it was a decision now with all the things that have happened with him making history and things of that nature, that it wasn't a bad decision. And right now we're still going strong. And so for those who feel like I tried to steal Kirani, trust me, that was no farther from the truth. That was Kirani's decision to choose me as his coach moving forward. And I did with hesitation, without not giving Coach Joseph respect. I asked him point blank, was that all right? And it really, with Kirani, it was his decision, but that's the way it unfolded, and so the relationship blossomed into one right away. I mean, we went right to the World Championships, and at the age of 18, he became the youngest world champion in 400-meter history. And from that point on, he went and won the Olympics the next year, and then he went to the Commonwealth Games, and then he went to the Olympics again, and he went to the World Championships again, and so here we are right now, and so yeah, I mean not many athletes believe in their coach to a point where they make that decision. Most of them are unlike Kirani. They won't step out and make that full commitment to think what's best for them, but they jump around. But once Kirani locks in, he's locked in. Um, but I've Michael, to be honest, I've turned down thousands of athletes to coach. I've turned down national countries and teams to coach. And because I didn't want anything to interfere in what we thought something was special. And when you look at all the history we've made as a coach and athlete, it was the right decision. I was never about the money. It was never about the power. It was never about the glory. It was all about that individual. And Karani, as I told his mom and dad, that when he left the country of Grenada, that I would be his adopted parent away from home. And that's what I've been. And that's what makes this relationship so special.
Uh, yeah. So, folks, I assume that this would have put all that conversation and that debate and this questioning and what have you, because I still get the question from time to time regarding that. And even though I did not ask Harvey Glance directly, he, brought it out, and I thought it was, very, telling of what transpired back then. And as he said, it was in the presence of Coach Alba Joseph that Kirani made that decision. And it was one where, while he felt uncomfortable, he wants to make sure that it's something that Coach Joseph was comfortable with before he proceeded. Okay, so it was Kirani's decision, according to Harvey Glance, for him to be his coach. Kellogg is saying again, let me get it. He's saying that getting athletes physically and mentally prepared is a very tough job. It's easy for some of us to criticize when these athletes don't perform to their full potential. Appreciation for the dedication and determination instead of criticizing, complaining, and bashing. Hats off to the coaches that sacrifice so much time and efforts to prepare the athletes. Very well said, Kellogg, because that is what happens most times. And sometimes it has to do, with the expectations that we always try to tell them. They must temper the expectation, right? Going into, well, yes, who would not want to win? You want to win, but sometimes you have to temper the expectation. And when they do not, as I recall, well, I was in Rio 2016, so I only heard about what happened. One person was telling me how he was cursed at, etc., because he was a diehard. He is still a diehard Kirani fan, and when Kirani did not win the gold in Rio, that there were folks who were saying all sorts of things. I've heard, listen, I have seen comments by people on social media of these athletes, and they are among the first to be posting congratulations, 473, this, that, and the other when they win. I'm telling you, I looked at it and I just shake my head. And some of them know who they are. And I don't know if they just do it for kicks, as they say, they just do it for fun, it's just a comedy. But, once you put things on social media, it's there, And I ask myself sometimes, do they go back and check to see the comments and some of the things that they put there about these athletes when they do not perform how they want them to perform? And then come in after as hypocrites with 473 and you make us proud and you're this and all the nicest things you hear from them, and not recognizing the sacrifices that these athletes and these other sportsmen and women, and when I say athletes, they don't necessarily connotes track and field, okay? But our sportsmen and women, the sacrifices they make, and if I may just drift a bit, Gold Cup, for example, is one where we have our local players playing in an international tournament as the Gold Cup, playing among professional players. And these local players are players who have, probably an 8 to 4 job, a construction job, whatever. And their training has basically is when they get the time from work, because there isn't a system in place where these sportsmen and women can give up their day job and depend on some sort of, well, I wouldn't even call it a stipend, but depend on something to survive. There isn't that in place. Okay, they are not professional. Okay, they are amateurs playing in a professional league at time, and it's as if we expect them, to be on top of the other players. They do not. The other players, and I'm talking about whether it's Honduras or the US or whoever they're playing against, these are guys who, when they wake up in the morning and they have their breakfast or whatever, their job is to go and kick a ball. Okay? Their job is to go into the gym. Their job is to keep fit. Their job is to play a game. Unlike our local players, they have their daytime job, you know. And sometimes I think we just look at the moment and believe that, oh, this is the worst created team, and this is the worst this, and this is the worst. But they're not going between the lines. They're not looking at all the possibilities and all the challenges that these guys are facing. Okay, it's not a Grenada professional team per se. That is a team that is based in Europe or playing football or on camp all year round, as probably other teams do. When the players are not playing professional football, they are in camp preparing as a professional unit. That is not the case with our Grenada team. And sometimes I think the expectations are a bit too much. And it's a bit unfortunate sometimes that the public demands so much of our players that they cast all sorts of comments on our sportsmen and women, forgetting that it's a sacrifice they're making as well. All I'm saying is, yes, we do expect something, but what we need to do is more of providing that support to these, bearing in mind the circumstances that they are operating. Kellen is once again saying, I was perturbed, Michael, when I heard some persons were angry and criticizing Kirani for not getting the gold medal. Yes, I heard that too, and I saw some of the comments in the recent Olympics. Kirani is the only male athlete in the world to medal in 3 Olympic 400-meter finals. This is unbelievable. All I can say to the critics is ungratefulness is a curse, gratitude is a must. Kellen, I saw it, I saw them, I saw the comments, and I asked myself, are these people living a normal life? Are these people people who are operating from Earth, from this world? It was so unbelievable that I didn't even want to make it into a discussion or argument. I just shook my head in disbelief, because under all the circumstances of Kirani James, I thought that Kirani just getting into the Olympic Games and performing, to me, was a gold medal level. After all that he went through, I mean, Coach Glance said it, Kirani has to be taking medication for the rest of his natural life. He has to be taking medication for this grave disease for the rest of his life. It's a miracle that Kirani is competing. Many people thought that Kirani would not compete again. Look at Gail Davis. She had to call it quit to track and field, to athletics, very early in her career because of the same thing. Kirani is competing, and he has to be on medication for the rest of his life. And loss of his mom, and all these circumstances, and he still went in and performed, and still won a medal. And there were those who believed that Kirani should have won the gold, and they were disappointed that he did not win the gold medal. Kellan, I don't think I want, continue on that, but I'm glad you brought it up because it's the first time I'm really, talking about it publicly. But it's so much a shame that there are Grenadians who are thinking that way. Let me go on. What is shameful, Michael, is that while Grenadians criticize him for not getting the gold medal, other nations are congratulating him and admiring him. Boy, tell me about some of our Grenadian people. Yes, Kellan and the World Athletics, the Tokyo Olympic Committee, they all, at one point in time, you're right, we almost thought that it was Kirani who actually won because the emphasis was so much on Kirani, more so than on Stephen Gardner. you know, Rudy and Sylvan saying, hi, is also the only athlete in the world to win every world-class 400 meter ever. Yes, Rudian. And as I said, I mean, we can start probably from Carifta Games, go right up. Kirani has conquered just about every single thing. Commonwealth Games, World Championships, Olympics, World Junior. I mean, just go on and just name it. Which other athlete has done that over the 400 meters in the world? There is no other athlete that has done that. The great Michael Johnson, no. And I think what we need to do is to, embrace what we have achieved as a small nation. That's all. Folks, I want to thank you. I just want to say it has been a pleasure being home. I appreciate, but I just don't like what I'm seeing. I made a comment there, on social media. Folks are not taking this pandemic very seriously, and it's folks, it's serious, And I saw a bus today, moving out of the terminal, and not one single passenger, including the driver, wearing a mask. I don't know what's happening, folks, but I mean, sorry for using this program to talk about that, but it's, this is unbelievable. And then I saw some comments under that comment there, and someone was saying that, this is, they saw a funeral, for example, and it was worse than that. Why are people taking chances with the COVID-19 in Grenada in particular? And folks just, someone said that, and, well, I heard it while I was in New York, but then I hearing it here again, that we don't have any COVID-19 in Grenada, so there's no need to wear a mask. They don't need to do this and that. But could you imagine that no one is few people wearing masks, and yet for all, when you go into the bank and you go into other places, you have to be wearing a mask. You have to be sanitized. You have to do different things. I mean, a lot of things not right, and we have seen and we have heard what have taken place in places like the British Virgin Islands. They were saying the same thing. Look how many deaths they had. They had 8 in one day, sometime recently. And they were, everything was going cool, and, they were saying the same thing. There's no need to wear a mask and do this and do that because we are safe and, we have no COVID. Well, it's unbelievable. It's frightening. And I'm just hoping and praying for the best. I'm just hoping and praying for the best. Let me just take a few more comments there before I wrap it up. Kellan saying placing that Bahamian flag on the gold medal winning was the classiest act in sports. Kirani is a world trendsetter, humility and manners. We say no more on that. As Kirani said last week when I spoke to him, it was just instinct. And he heard the folks from the Bahamas, they were shouting at him about the flag being there, and he just instinct, I think like that. Yes, Jenny Joseph, I'm hoping to see you definitely before I leave. I'm hoping to. I prefer the in and out, but I owe you that. Definitely. Thank you very much for folks who will be part of the program. And while we started on a good note, talking about the Paul Phillip and then Harvey Glance and talking about our sportsmen and women, I have to end on this sort of disappointing thing about the COVID. But it's important that we try to use all opportunities to educate our people. Thank you very much. Invitation is yours to join us on Saturday. I'm hoping to have another program here in Grenada before I leave. It has been a pleasure, and I want to thank you and wish you all the best for the rest of the week. Thank you to Kellon and Rudian and all the others who have been always been part of the program and providing their bits and pieces. Thank you once again. Good night. I'm Michael Bascom, wishing you a pleasant evening.